Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Dapper Minds with your co hosts, Jide Odulier and
Joel Ebner. Today we have a fun topic for you today. Social media is something that we've all probably used at some point or another, at the very least recognize is a huge part of our society today. At the same time, while it's so widespread, there can be some negative aspects to it. And that's something that's been covered in this documentary titled The Social Dilemma. Now, I actually haven't seen the documentary, and this is more of Jide's field anyways, with psychology and sociology. So I'm going to kick it over to Jide right now, and he's going to talk a little bit about what's going on in this documentary.
all right, so let me give you a little rundown of this documentary. Essentially, the director he utilizes some interviews. So he interviews some former engineers, executives of these tech companies like Google, Facebook, Instagram, and some actually he uses some acting as well. So there are portions of interviews and there are portions of acting. And the film explores the rise of social media and the damage it has caused to society. It focuses on the exploitation of its users for financial gain through surveillance capitalism, which I will touch on much later in the episode, and data mining. How its design is meant to nurture an addiction. So it's talking about how these companies, they have created these platforms to be addicting so that they can make this money, which is, again, that's where the surveillance capitalism is gonna touch base on that. And also how this social media affects our politics, our mental health, and its role in spreading conspiracy theories like Pizzagate and aiding groups such as flat earthers.
So this is very much a negative documentary. It's a critique of social media.
Oh yeah, I would definitely say that. Yeah, it is pretty anti social media. They really go into detail about how these things are addicting, how these things are pretty poor for our health, poor for our lives, poor for our social uh, interactions. I mean, yeah, it's if we were going into our high school debate type stuff, this is definitely the negative.
This is the negative right here, ladies and
Oh yeah.
gentlemen. So I guess we're gonna dig into it. Obviously, this is the documentary's viewpoint. We'll touch on GD and my own viewpoint on social media as we kind of dig into this a little bit. But GD, why don't you hit us with that first critique of social media that this documentary presents?
All right. So for this first critique, basically, well, actually, I want to, before I get on those critiques, there are three of them. I mean, there are multiple, but they touch base three main ones. All right. But I just wanted to give us a little education, give us some understanding of what we're dealing with here. All right. So let me start off with algorithms. Now, you may be asking at home, what are algorithms? Well, actually, you may not be asking that because you're like, I already know. But just to make it more complex, make you confused, algorithms are recommendation engines for search, trending, autocomplete, and other mechanisms to predict what we want to see next. All right, so these algorithms, they're predicting, and they're just there to aid us in our use of technology. But algorithms don't understand what is propaganda and what isn't, or what is fake news and what is fact checked. All right. Their job is to surface relevant content, relevant to the user. And they do it a pretty bang up job of that. I mean, I ain't gonna lie. So again, these algorithms, they control what we can and cannot see, and they determine what the content of what billions of internet users read, watch, and share. So basically, I just said the same thing in two different sentences, but I'm trying to hammer home on this idea that algorithms, they affect us in a pretty profound way. All right. Let me drop this little statty stat on you, right? YouTube's video recommendation algorithm inspires 700 million hours of watch time per day and can spread misinformation, disrupt elections, and incite violence. Yeah, I mean, these algorithms, they are huge impact. In fact, there's this example that the Social Dilemma, the movie, that they provide on their website. They say a United Nations report about the genocide in Myanmar reads, the role of actually no, this is from a different article. I'll touch base on that in a minute, but a United Nations report about the genocide in Myanmar reads, the role of social media is significant. Facebook has been a useful instrument for those seeking to spread hate in a context where, for most users, Facebook is the internet. The extent to which Facebook posts and messages have led to real-world discrimination and violence must be independently and thoroughly examined. So this is just an example of what I was talking about earlier, that these algorithms, they affect how we relate to one another. They affect, how we say, those people, they're nice, or those people, they're mean. It's just that these algorithms just put together any sort of information that they deem as relevant, and that can cause real world effects, that can cause discrimination. It can lead to actual violence. I mean, we've seen that time and time again, especially in the recent years, especially in the last, I could just say summer and now fall. I mean, it's been crazy. So yeah, what are your thoughts on these algorithms, Mitchell, that these things, and the funny thing is, so algorithms, they're programmed, they're created by, the tech companies, but then the algorithms, well, I'll actually touch base on that, but go ahead, Mitchell, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, this is probably I like how you brought up the example of YouTube, because I think that's probably where most people are seeing it, and probably where most people have heard of it. Because YouTube is probably like one site that if somebody uses no other social media at all, which for reference is me. I don't have Facebook, I don't have Instagram, I don't have TikTok, Snapchat, or any of that stuff, but I still go on YouTube. And I think that's sort of the case with a lot of people, no matter kind of who you are, whether you're somebody who's big into social media or not, because I think a lot of us don't even think, man, YouTube isn't really social media, but it actually technically is social media. And that's where we see a lot of the algorithms, because a lot of us watch those videos that pop up on a recommended video list, that pop up on our homepage based off of things that we've either watched, searched for, subscribed to. And that controls a lot of what we see on the site. And I think it's important to note that while we think we have a lot of control, and in some terms we do, we decide, I want to watch this video. What videos are popping up from that list of options we kind of have off the homepage or off of one video is determined by that algorithm. And I think that's important when you note cases, and obviously that was with Facebook, with the whole genocide in Myanmar and everything, but like what's popping up from the site based off the algorithms, that can have a huge influence on what content you're seeing, what's starting to influence your life, and potentially, what political beliefs, what, information you're taking as being truthful, that you're adopting. It can be hugely influenced by these algorithms and how exactly they operate. And the thing is, very few people actually know how these things work, and it's not something that's made readily transparent by these companies either.
Yeah, I mean, personally, when I go on YouTube, woo, that rabbit hole, whoa. It is so easy to go down. You'll be like, oh shoot, that video. You click in, and it'll be like up next or recommended, and you're like, oh shoot, that video. And I don't know. And I found myself just like, I'll have something to do, like let's say it's homework, or even though I'm in college, chores. Hey, don't probably got chores,
I do have chores, so, and it's not a list. I just kind of go and do it because I'm a responsible young adult. But
I see how.
hey, I'm just saying, I got a 15-minute break in between classes. I go to grab a snack. I take out the recycling because
Oh, oh, okay.
I got time. But yeah, I get what you mean. And that's another big part about all this, aside from what we're being what we're getting in a recommended feed that we're going to watch, like how that influences us. It's also just purely like almost like an addiction type thing going on, where these videos are also kind of based on this algorithm that's designed to just keep watching and watching and watching, because that's the way that these companies make money, is by consuming more content, by staying longer on these sites. And you can obviously see the negative detriments. I think pretty much any student can say like, oh yeah, I put off homework because I was too busy watching a YouTube video or something before. It's something that very easily we can see, yeah, that's I should have stopped. I should have stopped and started taking care of my responsibilities, but I kept it going because why? Because I was entertained, because I found it something really easy to do. And that's exactly what these sites are designed to do. But we're seeing more than that point here, and I think G is going to touch on another one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I mean, I might take them together. I might take them together because we're both touching on them, so I should just get it out there. So it's basically the two things I want to touch on are artificial intelligence and surveillance capitalism. All right. So we'll start off with that artificial intelligence. We're going down the rabbit hole even more. No, I'll try to make it as simple as possible. But basically, artificial intelligence is a very broad term that applies to the many different advanced uses of algorithms to mimic and or replace the need for human intelligence. So that's what I was saying before, that the companies, they just set up an algorithm, they set up this AI, and the AI will start to act on its own, which I'll touch on now. It uses a system of these algorithms, the AI, and it can create or modify algorithms without human intervention or intelligence through the process of continually optimizing for better and better results, which is called machine learning. So these AI, you'll click on a video, the AI, it's documenting that data. It's like, okay, so they like these type of videos. Okay, I'm going to recommend these type of videos. So the AI is continually learning your likes, your dislikes. And so it just gets better and better at recommending you those things to keep you longer and longer on these platforms. All right. So corporations are increasingly building AI algorithms that draw upon our digital data to model our behavior, target us, and make complex business decisions. All right. And now to further to envelope everything that we talked about. Why would companies want to do all this, cheese? I mean, it's big bad, right? Well, I mean, I guess so, but this is what the company's thinking. They're like, money.
I mean, that's the realistic goal of any company. To be successful, they need money. So what's a great way for social media companies to make money? Get you to keep consuming their content. And I think a lot of us, you're talking about artificial intelligence. I think a lot of people think of sort of sci-fi, whether it be, Space Odyssey or iRobot or whatever universe you want to think of with
Yeah.
artificial intelligence. Sort of think along those lines. I don't think a lot of people realize that a lot of it is used in things like this. That sort of learning aspect is kind of used in these recommendations. We've sort of been talking about this sort of addiction effect, but that's where this is coming from. This is where they're hooking and sinkering you into it. And you can't necessarily blame these companies because, that's their goal. And I think everybody should realize that whenever they look at a company, their goal is to make money. That's how they survive as a company. That's how they thrive as a company. Um, but I think it's something we all need to be mindful of as we're looking at this stuff, that we know what they're doing. We know that they're trying to hook and sinker us with this, and they're using this artificial intelligence to do it, to keep us, hanging on. And there's certain other tactics that they use, but this artificial intelligence is probably something that's a little bit more unique to social media as a company in comparison to other companies, because
Yeah.
of the way that you select your own content like this.
Yeah, for sure. It is Yeah, it is. It's pretty crazy how it's come about, but it is proven very effective. This artificial intelligence, but but like I was saying, to conclude, all this education I'm trying to give you people.
Oh boy.
Yeah, the surveillance capitalism. All right, why? This is basically answering why would a company want to do this? All right, like Mitchell said, for success, they got to make the money. Well, surveillance capitalism is how they're gonna do it. All right. So, what is surveillance capitalism? It refers to the mass surveillance of our online activity. Okay, in ways that we are often unaware, and the commodification of this data for further commercial purposes. All right. This ability to manipulate us by our activity has made these companies the richest in the history of the world. All right. So, to even go further down, major tech companies have been using targeted advertising since the early 2000s. But things changed a lot with the advent of the smartphone. Platforms are not just collecting basic demographic information that we willingly provide upon sign up, they're tracking every click, every like, every photo, every exclamation point and question mark we use, and then combining this knowledge with powerful AI. The bigger the problem is how the bigger problem is how the data feeding the underlying algorithms is being used to model and predict all of human behavior, giving the highest bidder the ability to influence us at scale like we've never seen before, from determining elections to sparking revolutions. So yeah, that just sums it up pretty well. That surveillance capitalism, that's how they're making their money. They're like, okay, we're collecting all your data. All right, so if we keep you on this site longer, then we will make our money. If we keep you on the site longer, okay, we can put more advertisement. We can put more Coca-Cola ads, or some McDonald's. You know what I'm saying? We can keep you longer, and that's their goal. They are really effective at it. Their AI is way more effective at it, and that's where we are right now. So, yeah,
Yeah.
Mitchell.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, hey, it's an interesting thing to think about with all this. That idea of something that we kind of think of being I want to say fictional, but at the very least, kind of in a separate universe,
yeah,
actually dictating, a lot of what we're doing online. And I think when we think about, all those critiques we hear about everybody's just so addicted to their phones these days, they're always online, they don't go outside as much. Like, well, there's some of that sort of general critique we have from every generation, critiquing the generation coming after them, and that part of it is just a cultural thing. But this sort of technological shift as well, there is a little bit of merit to that, just simply because we can see that that's exactly what they're trying to do, is kind of have this sort of addiction effect take place in our brain. And while we hear a lot about, I don't know if the documentary touches on this as much, the idea of like decreasing attention span, um, because that sort of constant sort of dopamine hit, trying to go from video to video, or post to post, it very much is, this algorithm isn't just like filtering stuff like just to make it more tailored to you, because in some terms, like, yeah, does it make the companies more money because now they're having more targeted ads, you're more likely to click on those ads, help make obviously the people who put those ads on make more money in commercialistic aspects, but also, because you clicked on it, now YouTube's making money or Facebook's making money. That would be so harmful if, because targeted ads or, targeted content, it seems like it wouldn't be a bad thing, right? I mean, you're getting more of the content that you enjoy. But we see sort of that negative aspect of it too, which is it's also making you more likely to keep going on and on and on, when it might be detrimental to not necessarily your health, at least directly, but your work life. I have to get this done. Now I'm watching YouTube, and this is something we obviously just touched on, talking about the previous point, but looking on it for this as well. The other big concern, and we saw this with for Facebook being put in the limelight for selling data and all that, and now we have all these new terms and contracts. That's the other thing. I don't think either Julian or I would say we're much of like tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists or anything like that. But I think most people recognize it's a little bit disconcerting, this idea that all this data about ourselves, like there's very few times we share, what our, videos or content we watch beyond like some basic stuff. I mean, it goes some really weird rabbit holes where I go on like medical, like surgical procedures, and then talk like this. Some of this my brother's showing like someone be an Iron Man guy. Like it's weird stuff sometimes. Not necessarily like sinister at all, but it's weird. It's not something that's commonly brought up. But to think that a company's holding on this data and they could be selling it to somebody, and obviously there are new laws and regulations being put into place. But I think at the very least, it's something that's a bit disconcerting to us. And it's another way that I think is a little bit more sinister than this targeted ad stuff is the fact that they hold this data about ourselves, and it can reveal a lot. There's an interesting case of actually a girl actually being found out by her parents that she was pregnant based off of her search history in Google. And I think her father went on her computer, and all of a sudden there was like ads for baby products or pregnancy tests, and it all came up because this daughter had been doing searches, how to tell if you're pregnant or stuff like that. And that kind of just goes to show like the fact that Google could determine that this girl was likely pregnant and started recommending stuff just based off some Google searches. Like that should tell you something. Like Google being able to figure it out, big companies like being able to figure out these very personal details about your life that you probably haven't shared with too many people, even within your very personal circles. That should send off a little bit of a red flag, I think, for each and every person.
Yeah, that story. That's just. I keep saying that, but that is that's pretty crazy. That's just. It is. It is a insane story.
Jude's just dumbfounded right now.
Yeah, I'm shook. Yeah, I'm shook. Yeah, that's pretty worrying. Oh, dope patron.
Jude was not prepared for this. I didn't tell him I was going to bring up this anecdote, and I got to be honest, I just kind of remember this from even a few years back. So you think even before like all these Facebook trials and stuff happened, like this was going on, like that this is something like Jude has been saying. This has been going on since like 2000s, and this has kind of only increased since then. How much data is being gathered and all that. So I think there is a little bit of responsibility for, some regulation to be put in place. But man, neither G and I are much politicians. We can't really say what's right, what's wrong, and honestly, that's not what this podcast is about. But what we can attest to is sort of the effects it has on us, psychologically, kind of sociologically. Does the documentary touch much on that, G-Day?
Why, yes, it does, Sir Mitchell the Third.
I'm not the third of my name. Just completely ignore that part.
No, you should. I think, guys, that's his name. Anyways, it does. Like we said, we're not really political people, but like there are three. They call them dilemmas. There's a social dilemma, but there are three sub dilemmas, right? The mental health dilemma, the democracy dilemma, and the discrimination dilemma. Like we said, we're not really politicians. The democracy dilemma is basically just about, just bias in like news and all that stuff and what YouTube is recommending. They're not going to be like, hey, this is fact check, this is not. It's kind of like what we're touching on before. So I mean, yeah, just political disinformation. That's a democracy dilemma. We don't really know what is fact and what is not fact. But concerning me and Mitchell's expertise, well, especially mine, concerning this one, the mental health dilemma, all right? So this is from the American Journal of Epidemiology in 2017, all right? A 5,000 person study found that higher social media use correlated with self-reported declines in mental, all right, me, and physical health and life satisfaction.
Yeah. And this is a big thing. I think most people probably have heard of this, and certainly we can point to just overall an increase in depression rates, suicide rates among our younger populations. And we sort of see that correlation with social media. And I think it's easier to see now with this study too. It's not just a correlation, it's a causation. Um, and I think the reason why we see that decline in physical health, obviously there seems like obvious aspect. If you're online, you're not, running around and playing as much as you used to. And like, yeah, maybe that's sort of true, but honestly, I don't think that's what's it. Because there's been study after study after study done showing that when your mental health is poor, so is your physical health. And so when you see such a decline in mental health due to social media, you're going to see that same effect on your body. It's been shown before, like people who, are dealing with really severe depression, they can have similar detriments to their physical health as, people who smoke. It's a serious thing long term because of that stress, those stress hormones pumping through your body. You have increased blood pressure, increased heart rate. You're more at risk to develop certain diseases. That's where we see a lot of those negative health impacts, aside from just behavioral effects that also affect your health. And I think there's something, and I'm hoping the documentary explains a little bit, but if not, I think hopefully you can explain this a little bit. Why is social media causing that decrease in mental health? What about it is causing us to feel more down?
Okay, it kind of did touch on it, and it was an acting scene. And basically it was that, with social media, we're not having, so it's funny. With social media, we're not having social interactions in person. All right. It's kind of like this thing with what is that? Isolation or whatever they do in prisons, like, you know what I'm saying?
Solitary confinement.
Thank you. Stuff like that. Like, if you're in solitary confinement, you're not going to be the same. I mean, it just messes with your brain in such a way that it's just terrible, because as humans, we need social interaction. So when we use social media, which is like, yeah, you're using words and all that, but it's just not the same. And especially in this acting scene, this kid, he was split from his phone and all that. And, he likes this girl. All right. And so since he was off social media for like a week, 2 weeks, or no, it was only a couple days, like 3. And, he was trying to keep off his phone for a week, but then, the temptation, the drive, he just went and picked up the phone, and he saw that his crush was taking pictures with somebody else.
Ooh.
So that put him in a depressed mood. All right. He was experiencing a depressive episode. So I think that us not having that real social interaction, us not being there for each other, like actually physically, talking physically, laughing together, playing whatever we do, it's not natural for our brain to do that. We're supposed to do it physically. And when we don't do that, it's just not good. I wish I could provide a better, look on this, a more scientifically sound way of putting it, but that's essentially what.
I think I can. And oddly enough, yeah, this is going to be interesting, because this information I can actually point to the pandemic that's going on right now as my source of information. I mean, hey, I got this. I got the statistic to throw down at you. So, Gia's talking about here a lot about not as much social interaction effects that can have. So it's been kind of hard to quantify it, because, there's sort of like a baseline. How much is social media actually decreasing social interactions? Well, I can give you a good picture of like sort of what the baseline was, prior to the pandemic versus during the pandemic. because obviously pandemic hits, boom, social interaction, like in its typical way, has basically decreased to zero outside of your immediate family, who you're rooming with, and all that. So pre-pandemic era, I think it was about 1 in 15 adults had a major depressive episode in during a year. Pandemic hits, that jumps up to 1 in 4 adults have a major depressive episode. 1 in 4 from 1 in 15. And that increase is huge. And that's all, I mean, obviously there's some stress concerning, pandemic, job stuff and all that. I don't want to say it's purely social interaction. That's not what we're saying. But social interaction is a huge thing. That's the more universal thing that we've seen. Like, humans are social creatures. And while social media, promises that connection, interaction, in some ways it does. You have somebody who's maybe you have a long distance relationship with, maybe you have family that lives really far away. It's a great way to connect with them when you otherwise wouldn't have. But it's also a bad thing when it's causing you not to connect with people that you otherwise would have had, especially in that personal format. I think the big thing that kind of Gio was touching on with that example that they brought up, there's sort of that, I don't want to say it was fear of missing out with that, but certainly fear of missing out with other stuff. It's sort of that anxiety. You're jumping to more conclusions with things, and you've seen a very edited version of other people's life. You're knowing more about people while knowing less about people at the same time. And
Yes.
it really messes with perspective about not only other people, but what life is supposed to look like. I mean, we look at media in general, like movies, TV shows, and we see a lot. The reality of life is a lot different than what we see in that. And social media is no different. The only different aspect of it is it's more likely to make people believe that's what life is like. Somebody's always posting pictures about how they're going on hikes with their friends or going to these exotic locations, how they're having great fun. That seems like it's more real because I know that person, that they actually went there and did that stuff. The problem is it's not showing them, struggling, with certain relationships that they're having, or, they did really poor on that test they took last week. It's not showing the struggles of people's lives as much. And that way we're made to believe that everybody else is doing really well in life. So when I experience, maybe I, just lost a friend, or I'm going through a really tough time, I'm made to believe that everybody else is doing great. And I think that only increases our anxiety, that we're supposed to be doing all these great and fun things, that our lives are supposed to look like how they do on social media. And I think that's another big reason we see a lot of people being more depressed, being more down.
Yes. There are.
Sorry, I just want a huge spiel. Just yes.
Hey man, I can't respond to everything you say.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I'm just saying the dichotomy is a little bit humorous. But GA, your turn to go on your spiel or whatever stuff you got for us now.
Oh yeah, this is your spiel nation. That's what Dapper minds. I mean, that's what we just do. I don't know. We just naturally do that. But now it's my spiel. And essentially two things. First of all, in my notes, I kind of have it here. So basically what it says, it says the persuasive design techniques like push notifications and the endless scroll of your newsfeed have created a feedback loop that keeps us glued to our devices. So what that means for our mental health. So since we are addicted, going back to that dopamine, all right, that reward, all right, this reward, it makes us feel good. We're feeling good, we're feeling joyous, we're feeling, I'm happy, I'm good. So what that actually does is it puts you at risk for anxiety and depression. Why would it put you at risk? Well, it puts you at risk because it's like, well, yeah, you're at a high, and then let's say, you see you're missing out with your friends, like your friends, they're partying, or they're going out with something, and they're doing it, but you're not there, so then you're like, oh shoot, they left me out, they don't like me, they don't care. So basically, you go from that high state and you fall. All right. So it's like, I don't know. It's kind of like the runner's high thing. What is that?
Yeah. It's when you have those
Yeah.
endorphins pumping through your body. Not
Yeah.
sort of a similar thing, not quite the same dopamine hit, but it sort of
Yeah.
does touch on sort of that same sort of, I don't want to say primitive, but in sort of way, it is a little bit more sort of baseline, I don't want to say jump reaction. That doesn't make sense either. It's sort of just more of a gut instinct, gut reaction, very much very like physiological thing versus something complex going on. Yeah, I think you're hitting on the same point. You're going from a high, and all of a sudden you see something crappy, boom. It's just sort of roller coaster sometimes.
Oh yeah. Not only is it missing out, um, but it's also just it's ooh okay, okay, okay. It's three things. All right. Number one, so okay, you're missing out, but also you compare yourself to other people. You're like, man, oh, okay, okay. So we in my media class, U of M, we talked about this. We were talking about media.
Nice.
Yes.
Have
We
really
talked
hit me with
about,
that twist right there.
I know. We were talking about media, okay? Why we were talking about media, that's not important. But what's important is we were talking about social media at that time. And we were talking about how there are two things on social media that are big boy red flags, all right? So what are these red flags? Number one is that on social media, everyone portrays a perfect life, all right? Like we have said, hanging out with your friends, partying. Oh my gosh, I got a new car. Oh my gosh, I got a new job. Oh my gosh, I got accepted to X and X and Y college and school and program and X and yes. So you portray this perfect life, okay? The other thing is that on social media, since since you're not actually there in person, you can exhibit, shall I say, more hostile behavior. You can be a little more tongue in cheek. You can be a little more angry. You can vent. You can say, I don't like you. You're 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 annoying, and you smell, or I don't know, just like stuff like that. And that's to read that's pretty painful stuff. So they're that's why we're also at risk from social media, because none of us have perfect lives. Let's just be real. None of us have perfect lives. I what did I procrastinate on the regular. And I didn't get a 4.0, Mitch. I don't believe you got a 4.0, but what did I get? Okay, we're not going to talk about that. But nobody has a perfect life, okay? There are sad things, maybe family member dies, maybe you fail academically, you fail with a goal or something. And yeah, so it's not true. So that's big bad from social media. And it's also not good that we are able to just access the worst part of ourselves and shove that in the face of somebody else. So yeah, that's why the mental health thing is huge, concerning social media. Yeah, could not be stressed enough. Could not. That's why we spent the last 15 minutes or 10 minutes talking about it. Yeah. Um, but yeah, to just touch on something else. There is also oh well, this summarizes what I just said. The discrimination dilemma. 64% of the people who joined extremist groups on Facebook did so because the algorithm steered them there. All right, that's an internal Facebook report. All right, now the website says algorithms promote content that sparks outrage, hate, and amplifies biases living within the data that we feed it. All right, so that's again how there's so much hate speech on social media. I mean, it is sometimes it's appalling. It's appalling, and it's funny. It's funny too, because let's say somebody's like, I don't like this specific group. Then you'll see like 50, 100 comments being like, kill yourself, you're a waste of sperm and all this crazy stuff. And I'm just like, yeah, they just said something terrible. Like, we understand this, but you're not making it better. And that's the toxicity that comes with social media. It is, I don't know, it's crazy.
Yeah,
Your thought?
I mean, it's a big thing because I think this is the point you mentioned before. It's a lot easier to say stuff online when you're either protected by anonymity or sort of that barrier, even when your name is out there. Like, it's easier to say stuff that's a little bit more vile, that's a little bit more hateful, whether or not you're doing it for a supposedly good cause or not. Like, you wouldn't be as ready to, curse at somebody when you're face to face with them. You're more likely to work things out, be more harmonious, but you're not as incentivized to do that when you have that barrier, when you have that separation, because your social inhibitions kind of decrease a bit because there's a less of that sort of in-person element to it. And especially when you have anonymity, you can say whatever you want without consequences. It is so easy
Yep.
for people to say, either I'm not even going to listen to your opinion, I'm just going to, shout crap at you essentially, or just say some really vile things. And it's an important thing to keep knowing. I think it's something that people sometimes forget because sometimes, yeah, there's people, from groups that spew hateful stuff all the time on social media or personal stuff. And I think our first response a lot is to kind of feed back into it. And we start spewing hateful stuff. You suck or whatever. Start cursing at people. I'm gonna throw an MLK quote at you here.
Oh, I,
Oh yeah, Gita here. You use your MLK quote for your scholarship you applied for the U of M?
I did. I forgot uh, don't worry about it. What's your
Don't
quote?
worry about it. I'm gonna throw it at you anyway. So it said, darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. And I think that's the big thing we're looking at here when we see all this stuff. It's easy, even when we see people we absolutely disagree with, to say that's a really, hateful perspective and all that stuff. We just want to go at them. And I think for social media, it makes it even easier to do that. It's a lot easier just to fight with people versus seek resolution. And I think part of that kind of is what feeds into it, because these groups that are really hateful, I think it's sort of get fed off from sort of like feeding the trolls. If you think about it, we kind of see that a little bit. They kind of feed off when people start saying, you're you're the scum of the earth or whatever, because it kind of feeds that perspective. Nobody else really understands, they're all just blind sheep or whatever. But when you treat people with kindness and respect, I think that's when you start to see some you actually start to see some change. And I think that's when you really prove that you are the bigger person, you're not the hateful person in this scenario. Because when you start fighting hate with hate, you're kind of on the same level. And it's something that social media kind of takes, I don't want to say takes advantage of, because I don't think it's an intentional thing in social media. It's more of a byproduct that really nobody's controlling, or nobody's able to control, I should say. But it's
Yeah.
something important to keep in mind when you're out there, whether it be in real life or on social media. It's actually a great story about this. I forgot the name of it, but he did TED Talk on this, and it was titled "Why I, as a Black Man, Attend KKK Rallies." And this guy actually kept attending all these KKK rallies
Mm.
as a black guy, and then he'd sit down with these Klansmen and actually have conversation with them, talk to them respectfully, try to understand their perspective. It seems completely wild. Why would you try to understand the perspective of somebody fundamentally is racist or hates your skin color, and you as a person purely based off of social things? Um, Anyways, what's interesting about this story is, and I can't remember the rank of the guy I was talking to, but there were actually Klansmen that said that they had more respect for this black man than they had for other white people who weren't part of the movement. And the reason why is he treated him with dignity and respect. And he had more than a few of them. And he had one guy who's really high ranking. I can't remember what his rank was in the Klan. He actually had him end up leaving the Klan. And the reason why is because he saw this black man was able to treat him with respect, with dignity and love, even when he was fundamentally hateful towards this man. And completely shattered his whole perspective because this black man wasn't He wasn't an ape or a gorilla or, some sort of savage to him. Like, some of the, that's sort of like the perspective of a lot of clans that you see is that, black people are inferior to white people and white supremacists in general, all that stuff, or any racist you can really think of. But when you show up with respect and dignity, and this kind of applies more than just racism and all that, you show that, one, you're willing to listen, you're willing to try and understand the person, because when you come in, I'm right, there's no way I'm wrong, you completely shut the other person down, because the other person, what's they're going to do? No, I'm right, you're wrong. You have no conversation going on. Everybody is a stick in the mud, refusing to move.
Mhm.
When you just try to understand, doesn't mean you have to agree with them, doesn't mean you have to change your perspective even. We just try to understand where they're coming from, why they believe what they believe. You don't even necessarily have to say, they're right for doing that. Just trying to understand, be kind, because someone who believes something probably hateful and mean, there's a reason they believe that. I'm not saying that reason is valid or it's good, but you have to understand where that comes from. They're trying to heal the rift instead of trying to make it wider. If you make it wider, you're only making the situation worse. And that kind of applies to this whole social media thing. Sorry, I went off on a rant there, but basically, sort of just a word of advice, sort of from MLK. He obviously wasn't around during social media and all that stuff, but just in general, kind of combating that sort of, when we see that hateful atmosphere, you show love and kindness, people are more likely to come to your side anyways. So if you really want to make a difference, show love and kindness,
Yeah. You reminded me of an MLK quote, not from my scholarship thing, but from me posting a quote every day. It says, "Every man must decide whether he will walk in the light of creative altruism or in the darkness of destructive selfishness." All right. And how does that apply to here? Well, these things we're talking about, it is all a choice. All right. You can choose to, fight hate with hate. I mean, why not let it fly? But or you can choose to fight hate with love, or you could choose to keep an open mind, and maybe not necessarily, identify with what people are saying. I'm not saying you should just hear anything be like, that's fact. But we should come to understand one another. I could go on a tangent about, what is that, Naruto Shippuden. That's a show, that's an anime that talks about I don't see it, but
Oh boy.
it's a show that one of the main themes is that you know we must come to understand one another to find peace, you know and that peace with one another is not going to happen unless we understand each other. So yeah, that was a random thought, but hey, I get the inspiration from multiple places.
Just so you all know, if Jidei's procrastinating, one of the things he's doing is watching Naruto. All right.
Hey man, I actually haven't watched Naruto in a while, but
Okay. When he used to procrastinate, Naruto.
now I'm watching The Office, I'm watching Riverdale. But yeah, we keep jumping around, this one thing though, Mitchell. We have instructed people to love and all that. But the question is, I think we were supposed to limit the timeage on this, but you know what? It don't matter anymore. Should we let it fly? Should we give the people the IMDb commentator?
Oh boy. Well, first, can you define IMDb to the people out there, or do you have no idea? You just know it's an acronym.
Well, come on, people must know. IMDb is a movie rater. I mean, you can find it pretty much anywhere. I believe Netflix has it. I know Xfinity has it. It is, and I believe it's in ads too. What? Well, yeah, it should be in a good amount of ads because IMDb, yeah, it's just a movie rater. They'll just be like, hey, this is our rating for the movie. This is a synopsis of the movie, some other ratings. It's kind of like Rotten Tomatoes. It's just, I don't
Yeah,
know.
just so people know, IMDb stands for Internet Movie Database.
Oh, come on. Whatever, man. Anyway, yeah, people, I was on the webs. I was looking for stuff, and I love comments. It's not hypocritical, okay? But I love comments. So, there's this one commenter, and he put beast. He went on his own spiel. I go on a spiel. Mitchell goes on a spiel. This guy went on a spiel too, and I really like what he said. It's pretty profound, and I think that's how we can wrap up. We give this thing, and then we close this bad boy. What's your thoughts, Mitch?
Yeah, I think we should go into it. And just for reference here, I know we've shared a lot of points and all that and information. Gia and I obviously have our own perspectives on social media. We'll dig a little bit into it. We're gonna read this comment, and then we're going to talk about some of the things we agree with, some things we disagree with, and kind of leave kind of based on our perspectives, because Gia and I have a little bit of different. Gia's more active on social media. He's got that Instagram, that Snapchat.
Got the Instagram. Social media. All I got is YouTube, Snapchat, Facebook. But Facebook, I only go on there because it'll be like, this notification and that notification. So I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna enter the app and see what it is, and then leave.
Yeah. But for a little bit of a dichotomy, I, on the other hand, only social media interaction I have is on YouTube, and I have to admit, I mainly just use it to listen to music. I kind of see a little bit that difference. G is a little bit more active. I tend to be pretty disconnected from it in general, but hopefully you can see from our perspectives and perspective of this IMDb commenter, kind of like what the different viewpoints you might experience kind of in relation to social media, and sort of our take with our kind of standpoints on it.
Yeah.
So with that, Gita, why don't you read us the comment? It's a little bit lengthy, but hopefully you guys can understand probably who this is coming from too.
Yeah. One thing I want to say is, Mitchell, because he doesn't use social media like that, that's why he speaks better than me. Because I, or that, or like, and yeah. But anyways, this is the comment. Quote, I'm in my 60s. I am at the age when I have seen this coming for years. Since the internet came along, it was a marvel. Wow, we could buy things, sell things, look up things, communicate with others. Amazing. Fast forward with social media, everyone is an armchair critic. We all scroll to the comments first. We like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. As I have heard before, social media is the toilet of the internet. It is. This hey, that was
I just keep going. I'll just laugh to myself.
Okay. This documentary is explaining what us old people have been seeing with younger people being totally obsessed with screens. Kids are growing up with phones attached to their hands, not fully understanding what the meaning is behind likes, emojis, thumbs down, and criticism. We sit back and watch as people are staring at, talking to, and being totally engrossed with their devices. I use mine to get help if I break down in my car. I, right now, have been cut off from a friend of 40 plus years because we don't agree on politics. He will not talk to me right now. My sister sends me daily emails of her point of view on who to vote for. My neighbor's phone beeps constantly with notifications coming from everywhere. Hard to talk to her. I have no children, and I'm glad now because of the way the world is spinning out of control, because of the media spoon-feeding us whatever it is that we choose to watch. Crazy. I feel for people out there that are trying to raise their children with ideals and morals that help them grow into responsible, humble, and trustworthy adults. We have come too far as humans to let social media bring us to our knees. As Senator John Tester said, I will be dead and gone by the time this all comes to fruition. I get that. and I've said it many times. Ed Grove. So, yeah, I guess to summarize that, basically, he's a pretty aged man. He's in his 60s. And, he talks about some of the benefits of the internet, and then he goes in on the big bads. And, yeah. So what were your thoughts, Mitchell? I mean, that was a whole spiel. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously, I typically, and I kind of get joked about a lot about this kind of being like an old man, I don't use social media much. I don't understand some, more modern English colloquialisms and all that. But
Yeah, what kids? What's all the fuss with the kids these days?
yeah, so there's some stuff I grapple with a little bit more. Like, yeah, I think sometimes people spend too much time on the phone. I remember when I was still back in high school, we sit in the cafeteria together. I remember being the only person not on their phone. I was just eating my meal, my Big Daddy's pizza, as they called it, with my pony fries.
Yeah.
But everybody's looking at their phone, whatever they're doing, either texting somebody, looking on social media, or whatever it is. I remember looking at like, man, why is everybody on their phones? Sometimes I think it's a little bit exaggerated, and obviously there's an aspect of this which is just generational gap. You think back, I can't remember was it Aristotle or some other Greek philosopher, but obviously, I don't remember if it's before written language or as written language was coming about. There was a critique of it, like saying, back in my day, we just had to memorize stuff, just by spoken word and everything. Now everybody's just going to write stuff down, and they're not going to bother remembering it. And it's sort of that criticism of the younger generation and their newfangled ways and how is a detriment. But now we look at it and we see that, the written word is probably one of mankind's greatest creations. And certainly has been very beneficial for humanity as a whole in helping retain knowledge, helping to, deliver knowledge to other people. So I think in that sense, is there somewhat of an overblown aspect to it, to this criticism of social media? Yeah, sure. That kind of comes with generations just in general. We blame millennials for being, lazy and entitled. And as Gen Z starts coming and developing more in the world, and certainly even now, again, this critique, spending too much time on the phones. So there's more of a cultural gap. However, saying that, there is some truth to this idea that social media is having negative impact. And we've discussed a lot of that. But I think an important thing to note, and the sort of the way I use it from my perspective, social media isn't entirely bad. There was at one point I had a Facebook, and the way I used it is I used it to connect to my church group. And that was the only thing I used it for. It was very limited capacity use, but it was a beneficial thing for me to be able to see, when events are happening or when people wanted to, come hang out and meet together. Social media doesn't have to be an entirely bad thing. It's a tool, and like all tools, it can be used for good things, it can be used for bad things. And when you use a tool improperly, it can hurt you or somebody else, or it can construct something that's honestly just a giant pile of crap. But when used in a proper way, I think it stands to really benefit the person who's using that tool and those around them. So Jide, why don't you talk about, like, I don't know, some of your experience with social media, what you think of this sort of negative attitude towards social media kind of relayed by this gentleman?
Well, before I jump into that, I just wanted to mention one thing that you were talking about, and you were saying that social media is good and that it can be pretty helpful with, oh God, with connecting them. And the documentary, it mentions the Center for Humane Technology, or Human Technology, Humane. I think it's Humane. And basically, what that is it's they're just they're a group. Well, it's a center, so I don't know. Anyways, they basically their goal is to actually I'm gonna go to their website. I was reading it before. It says, as long as social media companies profit from outrage, confusion, addiction, and depression, our well-being and democracy will continue to be at risk. The Center for Humane Technology is dedicated to creating the conditions for radically reimagined 21st century digital infrastructure. All right. So basically, I don't know if you could glean or gauge that from what I just said, but their goal is to just take technology and make it what it was meant to be in the beginning. Because Google and Facebook and all these different companies, they didn't start out saying, you know what, we are going to make one of the most addicting things in the world. They started out saying, you know what, we want to make a difference in the world. We want to, let's take Facebook. We want to connect people. I want to connect people. I want people to be able to reach out and interact, even if they're not there in person. Google. I want to be a search engine. I want to be able to help people learn things that they wouldn't be able to, maybe they have to buy a book or maybe they have to go to a library, but I want to be there. So, these companies, they started out being a tool, and then they were like, well, we got to make money. So that's where the surveillance capitalism and the addiction comes in. So the Center for Humane Technology, they're trying to make it more of a tool again. And that's where I'm going to segue back into this comment. And I think, I think social media be big boy awesome and big boy bad. I think it's rather interesting because when you think about it, there's so much time used on social media. You can spend so much of your time just like scrolling through, trying to connect with other people and all that jazz. So yeah, I think that, is it addicting? Yes, but it can also be pretty beneficial, and I've found it pretty useful. Like me, I like quotes, so what do? I post a quote a day. I'm like, hey, what, I'm like, creative altruism, MLK, I got all the quotes, and I think it's a nice way to spread positivity, love throughout the world. So social media is definitely a tool. It's just that it's become this thing that become a little sour. Yeah, that's my point of view. You know, any stories, anecdotes I got? Well, I just use it a lot. Oh gosh, YouTube. Whoa, whoa, YouTube. Whoa, yeah, YouTube. Oh my gosh, YouTube. Way too much. Yeah, but it is proven beneficial. Like there's TED Talks, man. There's Crash Course. There's some great stuff on there, and I'm just hoping that in the future we get back to it being more of a tool instead of this thing where I got an essay due, I got homework due, I got an assignment due, and instead of getting it done at 3 p.m., I'm getting it done at 10 p.m. because I decided, hey, this YouTube is big good, and then I'm watching YouTube, and then I gotta eat dinner, and then I'm watching more YouTube, or I'm watching Netflix, or I'm doing something else. You know what I'm saying? So crazy.
Yeah, or sort of on the another negative effect of it, aside from procrastination, it's pretty easy to recognize when you're looking and you're realizing I'm spending too much time either, looking at what my friends are doing on Facebook instead of trying to hang out with my friends. Spending too much time obsessing over what my friends are doing versus trying to form my own memories, trying to live my own life and focus on that. So I think, we kind of describe, social media as a tool. And, if you picture like a hammer is designed to drive nails into wood, sheetrock, or whatever, right? Right now, so lately, social media has been hitting a lot more thumbs than it has nails. All right, and you got to be able to recognize there's a balance for everyone, and there's way everybody is going to use this thing. You have to know what's going to be good for you when it's impacting you positively and when it's impacting you negatively. So you got to recognize right now, social media, if it's a hammer, are you hitting a nail right now? Are you building something good? Or are you hitting your own thumb? You're actually hitting somebody else with a hammer, You got to be asking yourself and be diligent for yourself because, Gia and I have our own perspectives. Obviously, we have different ways that we use social media to impact our lives positively. We both have our own sort of negative effects with social media as well. And I think that kind of stands true with each person. There are obviously some trends that we can follow, we can see, but at the end of the day, each person has to recognize that for themselves. How is this going to impact me positively? How is this going to impact me negatively? And what am I going to do to try and maximize those benefits? What am I going to do to try and minimize those detriments? And it's going to kind of be applied to all areas of life. But when we look at social media, we look at the topic that we're talking about today, I think it's important for you to kind of ask your question now as the viewer. What is social media doing in my life? And how am I going to make sure that stays a positive influence? Jide, are there any final comments you want to add on?
I want to jump on your bandwagon and say two things. Number one, taking what Mitchell said, how is social media positive to me? So what I would say to that is take what I just said. Two things, all right? Number one, make social media a positive to you. If it is not positive, if you are just wasting time watching videos about cute cats, no. All right? I mean, yeah, there's a time and a place. We can pick a, you can pick a time and place where it's high and dry.
Oh boy.
I'm sorry.
Jide and Hamilton, I tell you, he has been quoting this stuff nonstop. 10 Dual Commandments, to be fair, I quoted a little bit. Now Jide is just using it in everything.
I'm sorry. When you said nonstop, I thought that was
Oh gosh, that was
yeah.
not. Do not even go there, my friend. I'm telling. Okay, we're gonna put a video up somewhere, and Gina and I are gonna duel it out to 10 Dual Commandments. You'll see. But Gina, hit us with the final point before we get too far off track.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not saying that these videos are bad. I'm just saying if you got obligations, I mean, meet those obligations before you start watching the cat videos. Okay. All right. So number one, and then number two, concerning other people, make social media positive for other people. Do not go around. I mean, I know you're like, oh, G-Day, it's so obvious. Just, yeah. But don't go around spreading hate, people. I mean, just, I feel like social media should be a platform where we show each other, we got each other's backs, and we are there for each other. We are there to support each other. We're creating a community for the better. And I believe that's what social media is supposed to be, a community. So let's spread love, people. Let's be positive to ourselves. Let's be positive to others. And I think we'll be good in the hood like we should. Anyways, yeah, so that's my final thoughts. And otherwise, do you have anything else to say, Mitchell? Otherwise,
I just want to say that rhyme was terrible. I'm sad that we have to end on that note, ladies and gentlemen. But I have nothing else, so I'm just gonna leave you with that. Just mull it over. Just mull over how bad that rhyme was. If you think it was good, feel free to send an email to our dapperminds at gmail.com email. Actually, it was a Dapper Minds Incorporated, INC, at
yeah,
gmail.com. Email, let me know how wrong I am about how bad that rhyme was. If you think it's good, or if you think it's bad, if you agree with me, just make fun of it as much as you possibly can. But I think that's all we have for today. Hope you guys all have a great week. Go. Yeah. Love people. Love people. That's all we have left to say to you, wonderful people. You folks out there. Well, this is us sign off. As always, all sources used in the episode will be put up on our website. We'll be listing them under episode 2, The Social Dilemma. Feel free to check out them. We highly recommend you go and read these sources if you're interested. Go do your own research as well. And stay a educated citizen of this beautiful country or whatever other country you're from. But that is all for today, ladies and gentlemen. This is Dapper Minds signing out.